Every family has a favorite child. And every family has the other one. The one who gets the leftovers. The hand-me-down dresses. The combined birthday cakes with someone else's name written bigger. The one who stands at the edge of every family photo, not by accident, but because someone decided, very early, very deliberately, that she did not belong in the center. My name is Faith Mercer. I am 34 years old. I am a licensed architect. I have saved 11 buildings across 4 states. I have won preservation awards. I have had my work published in national magazines. I have had entire towns name reading rooms after me. And for the first 34 years of my life, my family called me the ugly one. Not behind closed doors. Not in whispers. Out loud. In front of neighbors. In front of teachers. In front of anyone who would listen and some who didn't ask. Last July, at our annual family reunion, my Aunt Patricia introduced me to a woman she had never met before. A woman who had driven 90 minutes specifically to be there. And the first words out of Patricia's mouth were, "This is the one we don't talk about." She said it with a laugh. Like it was charming. Like it was a cute little family joke that everyone already knew the punchline to. What she did not know, what none of them knew, was who that woman was. What she was carrying in that leather portfolio bag. And what was about to happen in the next 20 minutes that would rewrite 34 years of labels in front of 40 people who had spent decades pretending I didn't exist. Stay with me. Because this story doesn't end the way they planned. If you are new here, welcome to CalmDramaStories, where real women face impossible families and walk out with their dignity still standing. Subscribe right now, because you will not want to miss how this one ends. And if you have ever been the one your family overlooked, the one who got the leftovers and the smaller frosting letters and the wallet-sized school photo that ended up in a kitchen drawer next to dead batteries, drop a comment. Tell me your family label. I read every single one. And I see every single one of you. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Because for you to understand what happened at that reunion, you need to understand what kind of family spends 34 years building a cage around one of their own children, and calls it love. My mother's name is Diane. My sister's name is Jolene. My brother's name is Caleb. In our family's solar system, Jolene was the sun. Everything orbited around her warmth, her beauty, her charm, her carefully tended image. Caleb was the planet with his own gravity. The smart one, the ambitious one, the one who got early admission to a state school 400 miles away and left at 17 without looking back. And me? I was the asteroid. The thing in the background that nobody could quite classify. The thing that showed up in photographs only when someone forgot to step in front of me. Jolene was the pretty one. Caleb was the smart one. Faith was the plain one. The difficult one. The sensitive one. The ugly one. I was 6 years old the first time I heard it out loud. It was a Sunday in June. My mother was sewing matching dresses for every girl in the family. My cousins, my sister, even my aunt's stepdaughter who had been part of the family for exactly 4 months. Everybody got a dress. Everybody except me. Jolene needs something nice, my mother said when I asked. She photographs well. I got Jolene's hand-me-down from Easter. A yellow dress with a stain on the collar that my mother did not bother to treat, because, she said, it wouldn't show up in pictures. She was right. It didn't show up in pictures. Because I wasn't in any of the pictures. That afternoon, we drove to my grandmother's house for a church potluck. I stood on the lawn in my stained yellow dress while my Aunt Patricia held Jolene's face in both hands and said, "This one is going to break hearts." Then Patricia looked at me, tilted her head, turned to a neighbor standing beside her. That one got the Mercer nose. Poor thing. My mother was standing 4 feet away. She heard every word. She did not correct Patricia. She did not say that's unkind. She did not reach down and take my hand. She laughed. A short, soft laugh. Like Patricia had said something everyone already knew and nobody needed to feel bad about. I stood in the yellow dress. 6 years old. I did not yet know that ugly was a verdict. I thought it was something you could wash off. Like the stain on my collar. Something temporary. Something that went away with enough time and soap and effort. It was not temporary. It was a label. And once a label is placed in a family like mine, it doesn't come off. It becomes the organizing principle around which everything else arranges itself. Every birthday, every holiday, every school photo, every dinner table conversation. All of it sorted around that single word the adults had decided was the truth about me before I was old enough to argue. A label works like a filing system. Once it's in place, everything gets sorted into it automatically, without anyone having to think too hard or feel too much. School photos. Every fall, the order forms came home in our backpacks. My mother ordered the full portrait package for Jolene, the 8x10 glossy that got framed and hung in the living room. For me, she checked the box for wallet size. $2.50. The prints went into the kitchen drawer with the expired coupons and the batteries that might still have some charge left. Birthdays. Jolene got theme parties. Princess party at 7. Spa party at 10. Pool party at 12 with a DJ and a custom balloon arch. My birthday fell 3 weeks after Caleb's. Every year, my mother combined them. It just makes sense, she would say. The cake always said Happy Birthday Caleb in full, sweeping letters. My name was squeezed underneath in smaller frosting. Like someone had remembered me at the last second and decided a correction pen was sufficient. Christmas. Jolene opened carefully chosen, coordinated sets, outfits that matched, shoes that paired perfectly, a coat with a faux fur collar. I got books. Not because I had asked for books, but because it was easier than caring about what I actually wanted. You like reading, right? My mother would say. Not as a question. As an instruction. Here is what you are. Here is what you get. Stop asking for more. There is a wall in my childhood home. A gallery wall above the living room sofa, 14 framed photographs arranged in the careful, deliberate way of a woman who understood that what you display tells people what you value. Jolene appeared in all 14. Caleb appeared in 6. I appeared in 3. In the first one, I was partially hidden behind a taller cousin at a 4th of July barbecue. In the second, I was standing at the far edge of a group shot, my body already angled slightly away from the camera, like I had learned to prepare for my own disappearance. In the third, someone's thumb covered half my face. I was not accidentally cropped. I was systematically edited out of my own family story, one photograph at a time, one birthday at a time, one parent's turned back at a time. At Jolene's high school graduation, my mother took 4 to 7 photographs. I know this because I saw the camera roll later, sitting on the kitchen counter. 4 to 7 photos, different angles, different poses, some staged, some candid. One of Jolene laughing with her eyes closed that was probably her mother's favorite photograph in the world. At my graduation 2 years later, the graduation where I walked across that stage with honors, my mother took one photo. 1. Me holding my diploma, squinting in the sunlight, completely alone in the frame because no one had thought to stand beside me. That summer, I started carrying a disposable camera. The yellow Kodak kind, 27 exposures. I took photos of myself at my own milestones. My first apartment. My first drafting table. The day I passed my licensing exam. I kept them in a shoebox under my bed. When no one takes your picture, you learn to become your own witness. You learn that if you do not document yourself, you disappear completely. And I had been disappearing for a very long time, quietly, one erased photograph at a time, until I had spent so many years stepping back that stepping back had become my automatic response to everything. I left home at 18 on a full scholarship to the State University Architecture program. My mother's reaction was delivered with the same swift, dismissive finality she used for everything about me. Architecture? That is not really a career for someone like you. Someone like you. She said it with a slight tilt of her chin. Half pity, half correction. The voice she used when the conversation was already over and she was just letting me hear the conclusion. What I did not know then, what I would not discover until years later in a dusty attic, was that my mother had studied architecture herself. 1 year at community college before she got pregnant with Jolene at 19 and the textbooks went into a box and the pencils stopped moving across paper forever. Every time I said the word architecture at that dinner table, something inside her went tight and hard and closed. She was not looking at her daughter. She was looking at a mirror she could not bear to face. I did not know that yet. All I knew was that my father loaded my suitcase into the car, drove me 3.5 hours down I-81 with the radio off and the windows down, and when he pulled up to the dormitory and set my bag on the curb, he said 6 words I have carried every day since. Build something they cannot ignore. He held on longer than usual when I hugged him. Then he got back in the car and drove away. And I stood on the curb in front of my new life and breathed for the first time in 18 years. I built my career the way you restore a damaged building. One layer at a time. Starting from the foundation and working upward, refusing to cut corners because corners are where buildings fail. At 25, I wrote a 32-page proposal to save a condemned Carnegie Library in a dying mill town in western Pennsylvania. The roof had caved. The town council had voted to demolish it. I showed them what it could be instead. They gave me 6 months and a budget that wouldn't have covered the demolition they'd planned. I slept in my car 3 nights because the nearest motel was 40 miles away and I couldn't afford the gas. I found reclaimed lumber. I recruited the local high school shop class. I worked until my hands were raw and my back ached and the numbers in the budget made no sense anymore. The library reopened on a Saturday in October. The town voted to name the reading room after me. I was 26 years old. By 28, I had my own studio. 3 people, including me. We specialized in courthouses, churches, post offices, the bones of small towns that everyone else had written off as unsalvageable. By 32, a courthouse restoration in West Virginia had won a state preservation award. Regional architecture journals wrote about the work, then national ones. My family did not know any of this. Not because I hid it, because no one ever asked. And the one time I mentioned a published article at Thanksgiving, my mother waited exactly 2 seconds before saying, "That's nice, honey. Jolene just closed on a 4-bedroom." I stopped sharing after that. I built an entire life in silence, not because I wanted to be invisible, but because I had spent 34 years learning that trying to be seen in that family only made the not seeing hurt more. There is a box in my grandmother's attic. Green spiral-bound sketchbook inside. Floor plans in pencil, then traced over in ink. A Victorian house with a wraparound porch. A downtown storefront with arched windows. A church steeple with handwritten notes about load-bearing walls and roof pitch. The drawings were beautiful. Not student beautiful. Actually, genuinely beautiful. The work of someone who understood not just how buildings looked, but how they stood up and why they held together. My mother had been an architecture student. My mother had real talent. My mother had stopped drawing forever at 19 because of a pregnancy and a wedding and a life that went in a direction she had not chosen and could not escape. I was 16 when I found that sketchbook. I sat on the attic floor for a long time in the floating dust and the afternoon light and looked at her drawings. And I understood something I didn't have the words for yet but felt completely. Every time I talked about architecture, every time I brought home a good drafting grade, every time I used the word design at the dinner table, my mother didn't see her daughter. She saw the version of herself she had lost. I put the sketchbook back. I never told her I found it. And I never stopped feeling the weight of what it meant. 2 years before the reunion, my father had a mild stroke. He lost some mobility on his left side. Kept his speech. The doctors called him lucky. I drove 4 hours to the hospital the night it happened. When I walked into his room, my mother looked up from her chair. "Oh, you came." Not warmth. Surprise. Like I had shown up to a party no one remembered to invite me to. I stayed 3 days. While my father rested, I helped organize his home office, insurance papers, medication lists, the accumulated paperwork of a man who had spent 40 years holding things together quietly while a louder woman ran the house. And in the bottom drawer of his desk, under a rubber band, inside a manila folder that had been there long enough to leave a permanent impression in the wood, I found proof. 8 years of press clippings, printouts from architecture blogs, award announcements, a scanned copy of an article from the West Virginia Preservation Journal, a photograph of the restored library, printed on regular paper from a home computer, slightly pixelated, the colors too warm. He had been collecting them since my first published project. Some of the blog printouts had URLs so long they wrapped across 3 lines of text, which meant he had sat at his slow desktop computer and typed every single character by hand, 1 letter at a time, because he had to find me. He had never shown these to my mother. He had never shared them with anyone. He just kept them in a drawer under his tax returns for 8 years. I sat on the floor of his office and held 8 years of silent witnessing in my hands. Later, standing in the doorway, I looked at him across the room. He looked back at the folder. He didn't speak. He nodded once. The nod of a man who had been watching from the edges his whole life, loving his daughter from a distance because the woman who controlled the house had made love expensive. July came with the kind of heat that turns the air visible. The annual Mercer family reunion, held every year at my grandmother's house, now my mother's, since Gran passed 3 years ago. 42 relatives. Checkered tablecloths. A grill that had been going since morning. My mother in the center of everything, arranging, directing, managing, performing. I had not attended in 2 years. This year, I came for my father. His stroke had slowed him. He walked with a cane now. But he had asked me to come, and when Gerald Mercer asked me for something, I showed up. That was the one thing in my life I had never learned to stop doing. There was a name tag table near the entrance. Pre-printed tags for every family member. I walked the length of the table twice. There was no tag with my name. There was a blank one and a marker. I wrote my own name, in my own handwriting, in front of 42 people who had been writing my story for me my entire life. My seat was not at the main table. My mother had arranged place cards in her precise, neat cursive: Diane, Gerald, Jolene, Marcus, Patricia, Ray, and my name did not appear anywhere at any of the 3 adult tables. I was expected to find a spot at the children's table, the overflow seating, the folding chairs at the edge of the yard where the kids sat with ketchup on their fingers and no one checking what they said. So that is where I sat today, between a 7-year-old building towers out of chips and a 10-year-old playing a game on her mother's phone. From the children's table, I had a perfect view of the main table. I watched Jolene's husband talk about their new lake property. I watched my mother lean forward with the expression she saved for things that impressed her. Genuinely, unguardedly impressed, the face I had been trying to earn for 3 decades. A cousin I barely recognized came over. "So what do you do again?" Before I could answer, Aunt Patricia's voice carried from across the yard. "She does something with old buildings. Fixing them up or something." "I am an architect," I said. Patricia didn't look up. Right, like on those home improvement shows." "Not exactly." My mother from the main table, not turning around. "Jolene, tell everyone about the beach house." I ate my potato salad in silence. And somewhere around the second cup of watery lemonade, a silver sedan with out-of-state plates pulled into the gravel driveway. "I want to tell you about Nora Whitfield." Nora was 50 years old, lean, dressed in a linen blazer over a white shirt with dark slacks and a leather portfolio bag on her shoulder. She stepped out of her car and looked around the reunion yard with the expression of someone who had walked into a room they were not entirely expecting. She was the senior features editor at American Preservation magazine. 3 months earlier, she had contacted my studio about a cover feature, a multi-part series on preservation architects working in rural America. She wanted me as the centerpiece. We had exchanged professional emails about logistics, project photographs, which buildings to highlight, when to schedule the formal shoot. In one of those emails, I had mentioned I would be in Hadley for a family gathering. I told her the town had a restored 1890s train depot worth seeing if she was ever in the area. She had said she might stop by. I assumed she wouldn't. That is how loose plans work. They drift away like smoke. I had invited her to see a building. I had not invited her to see my family. She spotted me at the children's table and walked over. "Faith, you actually came. I told you I was going to be in Hadley." "You did." She looked around the yard. "I brought the layout proofs for the feature. I thought we could go through them." I looked at the reunion, my mother rearranging the dessert table, Jolene taking selfies with cousins, Patricia circulating and performing. "It is always a bad time here," I said. "Sit down." She sat at the children's table. The first adult that day who chose to sit with me. She opened her portfolio and spread out the printed photographs of my completed projects. Full color, high resolution. The courthouse. The library. The church in Ohio. spread across a plastic tablecloth between a cup of watery lemonade and a paper plate of potato salad. It took Aunt Patricia exactly 12 minutes to notice. She had a radar for deviations from the script. A well-dressed stranger sitting at the children's table with professional photographs was a significant deviation. She walked over. Visor pushed back. Drink in hand. Hostess smile at full power. Well, hello. Are you a friend of someone's? I started to speak. Patricia tilted her head, looked at Nora, and delivered the line that had been polished smooth from 30 years of casual, laughing cruelty. This is the one we don't talk about. She said it with a light laugh. Like it was charming. Like it was a little family anecdote that would make a stranger smile and lean in. Like these were words that had never cost anyone anything. Nora's face went completely still. Not angry. Not shocked. Still. The way a camera goes still in the half-second before the shutter falls. She looked at Patricia. Then at me. Then slowly back at Patricia. I'm sorry. What did you say? Patricia doubled down. She always doubled down. Oh, it's just a family thing. Every family has one. The quiet one. The plain one. She waved her hand, the same dismissive wave I had been watching since I was 6 years old. Nora did not laugh. She set her coffee cup down. Slowly. Deliberately. The way someone sets something down when they have already made a decision and they just need one more second before it becomes irreversible. My mother appeared at the end of the table. She had seen the stranger and her territorial instinct moved faster than her courtesy. Who is your friend, Faith? She said the word friend with the full weight of suspicion. I opened my mouth. Nora spoke first. I'll introduce myself in a moment, if that's all right. I'd like to wait until everyone is listening. The air over that yard shifted. Like pressure before a storm. Like the moment in a building inspection when you tap the wall and hear the hollow sound and know something behind it has been failing for a very long time. Nora looked at me. Low, quiet. May I show them? I looked across the yard. My father in his lawn chair under the oak tree. My mother at the dessert table, cutting pie with the precision of a woman who needs to control even the size of slices. Jolene. Patricia. The family that had been writing my story since I was 6 years old. They won't care, I said. Nora didn't blink. I'm not asking if they'll care. I'm asking if you'll let me. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. I nodded. Nora stood. She smoothed her blazer. She picked up her leather portfolio. And she walked to the main table the way a woman walks who has spent her entire career choosing what deserves to be preserved and what deserves to be seen. Excuse me. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just clear and steady and impossible to talk over. The main table turned. Then the second. Then the children near the sprinkler. Someone reached over and turned down the Bluetooth speaker. 42 people turned their faces toward a woman they did not know. Nora reached into her blazer pocket and produced a business card. She held it between 2 fingers and placed it in front of my mother. My name is Nora Whitfield. I am the senior features editor at American Preservation magazine. She let that sit for one breath. I drove 90 minutes today. Not for the reunion. She extended her arm. Palm open. Simple. Factual. The way you identify someone in a room full of strangers when you want there to be absolutely no confusion. I'm here because of her. 7 words. And they rewrote 34 years of labels in one sentence. The yard went silent. The kind of silence where you can hear ice shifting in a cooler 20 feet away. Nora opened her portfolio. She held up the first photograph. My restored courthouse in West Virginia. Late afternoon light catching the limestone facade. Every detail of the stonework clean and proud and alive. This building was scheduled for demolition 3 years ago. Your daughter saved it. Her restoration won the State Preservation Award. She held up the second. The 1920s library in Pennsylvania. Arched windows gleaming. The reading room with its reclaimed lumber ceiling, warm and solid and full of light. This was her first major project. She was 25 years old. The town voted to name the reading room after her. A third photograph. A white clapboard church in rural Ohio, its steeple restored, its stained glass cleaned and relit, the whole building standing the way it was always meant to stand, dignified, permanent, present. The congregation sent us 63 letters asking us to feature the architect who saved their church. 63 families. She spread all 3 photographs across the table. In front of my mother. In front of Patricia. In front of the Whitlock relatives and the cousins and the aunts who had spent 40 years telling one of their own that she was worth less than everyone else. Faith Mercer is one of the most important preservation architects working in America today. She has saved 11 buildings across 4 states. Her feature will run as our October cover story. One pause. Let it land. And she is your family. I assumed you knew. 5 words. I assumed you knew. Delivered without judgment, without malice, without drama. Pure, clean, professional devastation. Patricia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. My mother recovered first, because my mother always recovered first. 30 years of controlling the family narrative had built a reflex that fired faster than honesty. Well, of course we knew. Her voice was bright. Too bright. The voice she used for the pastor's visits and the neighbors' casseroles. Faith has always been. We have always been very proud. She smiled. The smile stopped somewhere around her cheekbones and stayed there, pinned like a corsage. I said nothing. I watched my mother lie to a room full of witnesses who had watched her diminish me for 3 decades. And not one of them looked surprised, because this was just a new version of the same performance they had always known. Patricia pivoted. I was just teasing earlier. Faith knows I adore her. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. Not dramatically, just far enough that her hand closed on empty air. Jolene went defensive, arms crossed, already rewriting the memory in real time. I mean, we knew she did renovation stuff. She never really talked about it. Nora said nothing. She stood with her portfolio under her arm and watched the family recalibrate. She had seen what she needed to see. A 16-year-old named Samantha, a niece I had met exactly twice, came running over from the sprinkler, water dripping from her hair, bare feet on the warm grass. She looked at the photographs. Looked at me. Wait, Aunt Faith. A town named a room after you. I smiled. The first real smile of the entire day. They did. That is so cool. Simple. Honest. Completely uncontaminated by whatever the adults in the yard were doing with their faces and their histories and their need to manage the moment. The contrast was devastating in the best possible way. My mother found me near the kitchen screen door 20 minutes later. She waited until the crowd had thinned. Until she could get me alone, without witnesses, in the way she had been managing difficult conversations my entire childhood, in private spaces where no one could verify what was said. Why would you do this? Her voice was low. Controlled. 1 degree from breaking. Why would you bring a stranger here to humiliate me? I didn't bring her to humiliate anyone. She came because she thinks my work matters. Your work. She said it twice, the repetition trying to drain the word of its meaning. Do you know what I gave up so you could go to that school? I sacrificed everything for this family. There it was. The script she had been running for 35 years. The one that turned every conversation about my accomplishments into a monologue about her losses. You sacrificed your architecture program, I said. When you got pregnant with Jolene. I know. The color left her face. All at once. Like someone had pulled a plug. I found your sketchbook, I said. Years ago. In the attic. The green one. Her mouth moved. 3 seconds of silence. That is none of your business. You are talented, Mom. You are really talented. I kept my voice even. But that is not my fault. There is no script for that sentence. There is no deflection that absorbs the simple fact that her daughter had seen her talent, acknowledged it, and refused to apologize for inheriting it. My mother turned. Walked to the bathroom. I heard the lock click. The woman who had spent 34 years making me invisible had just made herself disappear. Jolene found me on the porch. Arms crossed. Backlit by the kitchen fluorescence. Already preparing the reasonable voice for unreasonable things. You could have just told us about your projects. I did. Thanksgiving 2 years ago. You called it a hubby. She blinked. The memory was in there somewhere, buried under 2 years of quartz countertops and vacation homes and the comfortable assumption that she was the only one in the family worth paying attention to. I didn't know it was this big. That is the point, Jolene. You didn't ask. She shifted. Changed tactics. Look, we're sisters. Can we not do this right now? Everyone is watching. Everyone has been watching my entire life, I said. That is the problem. Her eyes went wet. Not from guilt. From embarrassment. From the unsettling experience of having her position as the center of the family story challenged in front of 40 people. Why do you always have to make everything about you? I let the sentence hang in the air between us. Let everyone on that porch hear it. Let her hear what she had just said to the sister who had spent 3 decades being no one. You had 36 years of everything being about you, I said. I am having one afternoon. She stared at me, opened her mouth, closed it, turned and walked back inside. The screen door closed behind her. I stayed on the porch and breathed and watched the fireflies start to appear in the yard as the sky went amber and soft. Aunt Patricia made her attempt 20 minutes later, not with me, but with Nora. She had spent those 20 minutes rebuilding herself. Fresh lipstick, hostess smile reloaded, performance at full capacity. She walked to where Nora was standing near the dessert table. So, Ms. Whitfield. What a lovely surprise. You know, I have always told Faith she was special. She is very talented. Nora was holding a plate with a slice of pie she had not touched. She looked at Patricia the way an editor looks at a manuscript that is nowhere near ready for publication. Did you? Because about 20 minutes ago, you introduced her as the one you don't talk about. The sentence landed like a glass breaking in a quiet room. Patricia's face went red, starting at the neck, climbing upward. I was joking. It's an inside joke. Inside jokes, Nora said, usually make everyone laugh. She did not smile. She did not raise her voice. She simply stated a fact and set it on the table and waited. From across the yard, Uncle Ray's voice. Quiet. Final. Pat. Sit down. The first time in 40 years of marriage that he had told Patricia what to do in public. She looked at him. He did not look away. She sat down. For the first time in the history of every Mercer family reunion, Aunt Patricia was silent. Not performing silence. Not strategic silence. The particular silence of a person who has just realized that everyone in the room saw exactly who they are. 2 cousins about my age, women who had grown up hearing the same casual cruelty dressed up as family humor, stood up from their chairs and walked over to where I was sitting. They didn't say anything. They just sat down near me, close enough that I could feel the bench shift. I noticed. I did not comment. But I felt it. Nora showed more photographs. A post office in eastern Kentucky she had helped write a grant proposal for. A one-room schoolhouse in Tennessee where my team had driven 200 miles each way for 8 months to supervise the restoration of irreplaceable 1905 hand-blown glass windows. A community center in rural Alabama that could not afford an architect, so I took the project for free, because buildings do not get to choose their neighborhoods, and neighborhoods do not get to choose their buildings. The common thread, Nora said, placing the last photograph down, is that Faith finds value in things other people have given up on. She did not look at my mother when she said it. She didn't need to. The subtext crossed the yard on its own. I made 2 decisions in the amber quiet of that evening. I would talk to my father. And then I would leave. My father had not moved from his lawn chair under the oak tree for the entire afternoon. He sat with his hands on his cane, watching his family from the edges, the way he had watched his family his entire life, from a careful distance, in a house where his wife's voice was the only one that counted and the habit of quiet had calcified into something permanent. His eyes were wet. I pulled a chair beside him, took his hand, the one with the slight curl from the stroke. I found the photos, Dad. In the study. The ones you took at my graduation. He looked up at the oak branches. Then back at me. 15 of them, I said. 3 seconds of silence. And then, in a voice I had to lean close to hear. Should have been more. I reached into my back pocket. I pulled out one of the graduation photos I had found in the storage room, me at 22, in my cap and gown, beaming, holding my diploma, looking straight at the camera with a face that was proud and open and completely unguarded. The face of a woman who was not ugly, who had never been ugly, who had just spent too long in rooms where the people looking at her had stopped being able to see clearly. And the folder in your desk, I said. 8 years of clippings. His chin trembled. He looked at the photo in my hand. I should have said something. His voice caught. Should have fought harder for you. You kept the receipts, Dad. I placed the photo in his hand. He held it the way you hold something fragile and irreplaceable. Keep this one in the living room, I said. Not in a box. He looked at the photo, ran his thumb across the glossy surface, across the image of his daughter at 22 on the day his wife took one photograph and he quietly took 15. He nodded. The slow, full nod of a man who had been saying the truest things in silence for 30 years, and was finally, running out of silence to say them in. My mother came across the yard like weather. Full name, fully deployed, the weapon of mothers who believe that naming you completely is the same as owning you. Faith Eleanor Mercer. You came to my family reunion and brought a stranger to humiliate me. I stood, hands at my sides, voice level. No one humiliated you. Nora came to talk about my work. Your work. The bitter, cracking laugh. Everything you have came because I raised you. I fed you. I gave you opportunities. You gave Jolene opportunities. You gave me what was left. I treated you all the same. Loud enough for the whole yard. The biggest lie in the Mercer family history, repeated so many times she had probably started to believe it. There are 3 photographs of me on that wall, I said. 14 of Jolene. You did not treat us the same. You were always so difficult, so sensitive. I did not make myself the ugly one, I said. You did. And you made sure everyone knew it. The yard was silent. 40 people heard it. My mother's face crumpled. Not into remorse. Into self-pity. The tears came, but they were the tears of someone who had been caught, not someone who was sorry. After everything I sacrificed. After everything I gave this family. This is how you repay me. I am not repaying anything, I said. I am leaving. I turned. And I walked across the yard. Nora was at her car. She handed me an envelope. The formal offer letter. Cover feature. October issue. Thank you, I said. For everything. Thank your buildings, she said. They did the talking. The 16-year-old Samantha came running across the wet grass, bare feet, hair still damp, eyes wide and unguarded. Aunt Faith, can I come see one of the buildings sometime? Like, visit one. I looked at her. Anytime. I'll give you the tour myself. She hugged me. Brief, fierce, the kind of hug that has absolutely no agenda. Then she turned and sprinted back to the sprinkler. I got in my car. I placed the offer letter on the passenger seat. On top of it, the layout proofs Nora had brought. On top of those, the graduation photo my father had pressed into my hands. One for me, one for you, he had said. I pulled out of the gravel driveway. I did not look in the rearview mirror. The highway opened up ahead of me, long and straight and empty in the way of summer evenings, when the light is low and golden and the world looks softer than it actually is. I drove with the windows down. I did not turn on the radio. The wind was enough. The silence was enough. 50 miles in, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from my father. 2 words. Proud always. I pulled onto the shoulder. Read it twice. The screen blurred for a moment and I realized my eyes were wet. I wiped them with the back of my hand. Set the phone down. Pulled back onto the highway. Around mile 90, I passed a building on the side of the road. An old gas station, boarded up, vines along the roofline, weeds splitting the concrete pad. The kind of place most people pass at 70 miles an hour without a second glance. I slowed down. Looked at the roofline. The window frames. The bones underneath all that neglect. I smiled. That one might be worth saving. 3 months later, The October issue of American Preservation magazine landed. My face was on the cover. The face my family called ugly for 34 years. On the cover of a national magazine. Not smiling for the camera, not performing. Just standing in front of the courthouse in West Virginia with my arms at my sides, looking straight into the lens the way my father's 6 words had taught me to stand. Steady. Present. Accounted for. My father framed the cover and hung it on the living room wall. Next to Jolene's high school graduation photo. My mother did not take it down. She did not acknowledge it either. It just hung there. A quiet fact in a house that had spent 3 decades avoiding facts about me. That Thanksgiving, I did not drive to my parents' house. Instead, I drove to the gas station on the highway. I walked the property, measured the walls, photographed every angle. I submitted a restoration proposal to the county the following Monday. Pro bono. Community space. A building that nobody was looking at, in a place everyone drove past. I knew something about that. In my studio, late on a December afternoon, the light coming through the windows amber and low, I opened my shoebox. The same yellow Kodak shoebox from college, now held together with packing tape at one corner. Inside, the photographs I had taken of myself when no one else would. My first apartment. My first drafting table. The day I passed my licensing exam. All of it documented in the frames of disposable cameras because I had learned, very young, that if I didn't witness myself, I would disappear. I added 2 new photographs. The magazine cover. The before photo of the gas station, all boards and vines and beautiful, salvageable bones. Then I added one more. The photo I had slipped from the family album at the reunion. Me at 10 years old. Standing behind a potted plant in a hand-me-down dress. Not one person in the frame looking at me. An entire family gathered for a celebration, and their daughter standing at the edge of it, already learning to take up less space. I held it up next to the magazine cover. Small girl behind a plant. 34-year-old woman on the cover of a national magazine. Same face. Same eyes. Same girl. I placed them side by side in the shoebox. Closed the lid. Set it on the shelf above my desk. Some people keep trophies. I keep proof that I was here. Here is what I know now. After 34 years of being labeled and 17 years of building a life that had nothing to do with any of those labels. You cannot restore a family that does not want to be repaired. You cannot fix people who are not ready to see what broke in the first place. You cannot make someone love you fairly when their love has always been a system of rankings and they need you to stay in your place for the system to work. But you can build a life that does not need their approval to stand. Every building I have ever saved started the same way. Someone looked at it and decided it was worthless. Scheduled it for demolition. Wrote it off as too far gone, too damaged, too plain, too much trouble to bother with. And then someone else came along and looked closer. Saw the foundation. Saw the craftsmanship. Saw what it could become if someone simply cared enough to try. I was never the ugly one. I was just in the wrong room. That is my story. 34 years of labels, one stranger with a leather portfolio, and a shoebox full of photographs that prove I was always worth seeing. Even when the people who were supposed to see me most had already decided they would not look. If this story reached you today, if you have ever been handed the hand-me-down dress, been seated at the overflow table, had your name squeezed into smaller frosting letters, share this with someone who needs it. Drop a like. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find stories like this one. Subscribe so you never miss what comes next. And drop a comment right now. Tell me your family label. The one they gave you before you were old enough to argue. Because I want you to know something. The label was never the truth. It was just the story they needed you to believe so you would stay small enough to fit inside it. You were always more than that. You always were.